Welcome to the latest Seahawks Draft Log live stream. Rob Staton, Jeff Simmons here to talk through. There's a lot of things to talk through, some big topics in the Seahawks world that we need to discuss. So let's not waste any time. Let's get into it. Just a quick message to say if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Get your super chats in if you have a question or a point you want to make, and like the video. Jeff, it feels as if we are close to finding out what's going to happen with Maxx Crosby. And I just wonder a little bit whether there's a battle going on here, whether teams are generally in the ballpark of where the Raiders want them to be. And now it's about the Raiders having the respect to say, we have lots of similar offers here. Where do you want to go, Maxx? And that when I see Lane Johnson's tweet and I see stuff like that, I'm wondering if there's a little bit of petitioning going on there, maybe, and Maxx has maybe sort of gone away to have a think about this, perhaps about what he wants to do, and they're going to let him decide. I that's the kind of sense that I'm getting here. But I want to come back to whether the Seahawks are still in the mix or not in a little while. I want to skip ahead, and let's just assume that he doesn't come to Seattle. I want to start off by talking about what the Seahawks do if he doesn't come, because I get the sense that there's just a little bit of panic developing here, which is what we saw 12 months ago, by the way, when they didn't sign Will Fries or any interior offensive lineman. I'm not panicked at all. I'm very relaxed. I want them to trade for Maxx Crosby. If it doesn't happen, though, Jeff, I'm going to be pretty relaxed about it. I'll explain why in a moment. But what do you think the Seahawks do if Maxx Crosby goes somewhere else?
I think they would mostly have a plan expecting that. I think Crosby, I don't think they're going in saying, if we don't get Crosby, we're screwed. We have no plan. There's just really, if Lawrence comes back, they're really just replacing Boye Mafe, and it's something that you can do with a third-tier free agent in the draft. If Lawrence goes, that's where things get really hairy, especially with Nwosu's cap number. But there's enough options. I'm guessing they have options in free agency they like. I doubt it's going to be the Trey Hendrickson top of the market guy. It seems like whoever misses out on Crosby is just going to turn to Hendrickson, and that's not typically how Seattle does free agency. Even a guy like Odafe Owe, who's going to get $20 million a year, I think he's going to be out of their range. I think there's a number of guys. It could be a Khalil Mack. It could be a trade for Jonathan Greenard, which we talked about a couple of days. You mentioned Rashawn Gary. I think they're going to have – the way Seattle does free agency is – they have a plan A, they have a plan C, they have a plan D, and they pivot. And that's how they talked. I was at the Combine. That's how they talked about what happened last year. They went in thinking Geno Smith was going to be their quarterback. And if they had a plan, if Geno says no, we have this guy. And then if he says no, we have this guy and this guy and this guy. I think that's what they've done. Crosby's got to be their plan A. I've thought for a while now, and we've talked about this, I think it's going to be a very hard trade for them to win. They're picking 32nd. They don't have an obvious player to include. Even when they were competing really against probably just themselves at the deadline, they still couldn't pull off the deal. And that's not a knock on Schneider. I think it's just this is a hard team to deal with historically, and they don't want to give up their whole future. And now you have probably the Bears and the Eagles and all these teams. The Rams might be in the mix. I don't see when you're starting from the 32nd pick. I have a hard time thinking they're going to win that trade.
I feel the same way. I think if they ultimately don't get Maxx Crosby, here is sort of my line of thinking. I think the first thing I do, Jeff, is I pick up the phone to DeMarcus Lawrence and say, would a couple of $1 million help sway your decision to come back? Like, can we make this financially worth your while if you are caught in two minds? You know, will a little bit of an extra pay increase convince you to come back? Because then, like you say, all you have to do then is replace Boye Mafe potentially to be right where you were before. And I don't think it's the hardest thing in the world to replace Boye Mafe. The guy had 2 sacks last year. So I think you call DeMarcus Lawrence and you see if you can do what it takes to get him to come back for a year. All in. Come on, let's go for it again. Let's go and try and repeat DeMarcus, and you solve that particular issue there. That's the first thing I would do. I think the second thing I do, and this is the thing where people will go, you bloody hypocrite, Rob, because you've been complaining about this in the past. But I'm actually going to suggest the thing that I've been warning against, which is the more I've thought about it, I think they're just going to have to platoon this situation, Jeff, and that you just sort of put bodies in there and challenge Mike McDonald to make it work. And the reason I've come around on this is because he did it with Jadeveon Clowney and Cal Van Noy in Baltimore. And the reason he was able to do it with those two guys is because they had Justin Madubuike and people on the interior creating a lot of problems. I think from Seattle's point of view, they have players who can create havoc from the interior. So, and also the other thing we've got to remember here is Mike Macdonald is not Pete Carroll. So when you throw Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin out there without anybody on the interior who can wreck games, it's a little bit different than saying, hey, now we've got Leonard Williams and Byron Murphy and people like that. And Mike Macdonald's coaching the team. And if you had to put some guys out there who, they're not necessarily the big names, they're not exactly the players that are going to get people excited when you hear that you've signed them, but you put them out there and you platoon this situation. I just think it might be enough, Jeff, for you to be very, very competitive. But the final thing I'll say before throwing it back to you, because I bet you've got an opinion on this as well. It feels like we have to say to anybody who is listening to this, there is no point getting het up about anything. Like last year, it was they have to sign a guard. There was, I think, there was the famous tweet from Corbin Smith saying it would be I can't remember the exact wording he used.
Was it an adjunct failure?
He did say it was an adjunct failure. Yes, he mistook which word he was. I mean, maybe I've just done the same thing by saying mistook. He used the wrong word to describe that situation, but he meant an abject failure, and it wasn't an abject failure. They didn't sign a veteran guard. He was talking about them getting Mekhi Becton, who's just been cut, or the guy who left Chicago, Tevin Jenkins.
Tevin Jenkins, yeah.
And this was after Will Fries had gone, and it was not the serious situation that everybody or some people thought. They were able to go into the draft and address this situation. I think if you end up having to go into the draft, Jeff, and you do have to sign a veteran who is not quite the big name, or you have to draft somebody at some point, it doesn't have to be 32, could be in the second day. I don't think it's even the worst thing in the world, because at the end of the day, you do have Mike Macdonald, who has proven that he's a great defensive mind. So I'm not going to panic either way, Jeff. I think my faith is fine with this organization. And whatever they decide to do, they're the Super Bowl champions, Jeff. If you ever feel yourself getting frustrated, throw on the Patriots game again and watch it. Like there's no real need to stress. We are not a team who is desperately trying to get through the window now. We've already gone through the window. We're into the car and we're driving off to do whatever we're going to do next. We're the champions. Like you don't need to stress and feel like the next move has to be a franchise-defining move, because they've already won a title.
Yeah, I'll come back and I'll push back on some things a little bit. Like John makes free agency very hard on fans. I'll say that. I'll say being like financially responsible all the time is like kind of like the equivalent of like investing in retirement. Like it's not a fun thing to talk about when you're in a window of like, say you're 40 years old or 30 years old. Like that's kind of how John Schneider does business. And look, I was at the combine and I was walking around the combine floor and we ran into Brian Brodus, who you probably know from the scouting world. And when Schneider was doing his podium, he actually hugged Brian Brodus at the end of his podium. And I've never seen him like anyone in the media. And so I pulled him aside and we did an interview with him. And one of the things he said that was really interesting, like I recognized him. And he said he used to talk to Schneider all these years and be like, I don't really understand some of the moves you're making. It doesn't seem like you're taking a lot of risky players. He's like, I'm just trying to get the coach the players he wants. And that just like opened up a light in my head. And thinking about Benson Mayo and Bruce Irvin and like Brian Brodus, Schneider was his intern. He's like, this doesn't seem like you. Like, this is not the kind of guys you like. And that's kind of what it is. And Macdonald. So I think like a lot of the moves that we were left wondering, like that might have been a very Pete dominant decision. And look, that's on John himself. But John also makes free agency hard. He doesn't. But look, I think Curtis from your show has done such a good job just illustrating. It's so easy to want to do what the Minnesota Vikings did last year and throw a bunch of money in free agency at a problem. And look, a year later, they end up cutting Jonathan Allen, Javon Hargrave, Will Fries would have been. I've said if they sign Will Fries, I don't know if they draft Gray Zabel. And I think you wrote the other day they probably pushed him up the board a little bit. If they sign Will Fries, they'd probably draft Nicky Minwari, and they probably don't draft Gray Zabel. I don't know if they win the Super Bowl. And so everyone wants like the fun move in free agency. It'd be so easy to just throw money at all these guys. That's not usually the problem. So I think they're going to do what they always do. And I know it's not the most fun thing for fans. They're going to try to be responsible, find value in like the third tier of free agency. It's going to be frustrating. Like I'm already prepared to be frustrated, but I think the Seahawks know this issue is lingering. I think they know with Lawrence's age, Nwosu's age, Halston's contract situation, there's a reason they've been trying to trade for Crosby. They realize what that elite rusher can do for this defense. But if there's no Crosby, I don't think they have, like, we're going to trade for the next version of Crosby. I think they're going to have a plan. And I don't know if everyone's going to like it. I can already see Seahawks fans are oddly tense. Like you said, they just won the Super Bowl. And it's like they've gone back to where we were last year. And I put out a tweet yesterday, like, it's boring to be financially responsible. And people are just like, what are they doing? Like, they're idiots. It's like, did you just forget? Everyone was in this mode last year, and they won Executive of the Year. So
what I would also say to that, Jeff, is I hope people can take some solace, because when you and I have come on and we've said, look, this is wrong, or they're not doing a good enough job here, and we had lots of conversations about the offensive line, and like last year we were pretty measured and sort of saying, I don't think there's anything really to be that concerned about, and just stick with it. And they won the Super Bowl, and I think you and I are sort of saying the same thing now. Like, there's no need to get too uptight about everything. And I hope people sort of realize that you and I are not cheerleaders. We're not the kind of people who will come on and just say that everything that the Seahawks ever do is great. You know, we have spent many, many streams complaining about the Seahawks, criticizing the Seahawks. So when we sit here going, there really is no reason to panic right now, I hope that means something to some people. There is one thing I wanted to bring up, Jeff. I hope what they don't do is repeat, because John Schneider's obviously been with the Seahawks for a long time now. So it's very easy, perhaps a little too easy sometimes, to sort of look back in history and go, I hope they don't do that again. But I can remember when all of the talk was getting a guard, and Joe Tooney was a free agent, and Kevin Zeitler was a free agent, and they didn't get either of those two. And the Raiders were going to cut Gabe Jackson. They'd announced through the media that Gabe Jackson was being cut. And then all of a sudden he was being traded to the Seahawks for what felt like a little bit too much of a handsome deal for a player that had been revealed to be being cut. And then they gave Gabe Jackson a pay increase. And then they brought him in. And then they took Damian Lewis, who just had a really good, strong rookie season at right guard, and moved him to left guard to shoehorn Gabe Jackson into the lineup. And it never really worked. And what I don't want them to do is say, okay, we've missed out on Maxx Crosby. We need to go and do a deal like that for somebody else. I'm very happy for them, Jeff, to sign Jonathan Greenard. Like, if Jonathan Greenard is cut by the Vikings, they're in cap hell, the Vikings. They're in the red more than anybody else, which is why they're cutting all these players and making all of these moves. If they decide we're going to just cut Jonathan Greenard, I think part of their stuff this week has been to try and generate a market for him. I don't think it's beyond the realms of possibility that they end up giving him away or cutting him. But if you miss out on Crosby, I really don't want them to give up like a second or third round pick for this player, because I just don't think he's worth that. Like, I think you have to be the team that sees an opportunity rather than just makes this happen. So I would bide my time with that one, see where the Vikings are at down the line. If somebody else steps up to the plate and offers them a second or a third round pick, then good luck to them. I would not want to do that personally, Jeff. And I think that would be a little bit Gabe Jackson-y if they do that for such a high pick. I would much rather them just be patient and let things come to them rather than be the aggressor for someone like Greenard.
And if you look at their biggest mistakes in free agency, it's been a lot of that. And so you mentioned the Gabe Jackson. They were trying to sign Kevin Zeitler. They had a connection with Russell Wilson. They were college teammates. And from what I was told back then, he didn't want to bring his family that far. And he's ended up going to, I believe it was Baltimore at the time. He went from Cleveland to Baltimore.
Yeah, went to Baltimore, yeah.
Yeah, and then they were in the mix with him last year, from what I was told, and they almost signed him last year. So I think they had questions last year. Then John, well, we don't need to get into that. But what they have done, and they were very in on Zach Allen. They were trying to sign Zach Allen. Zach Allen's defensive coordinator in Arizona was Vance Joseph, who became the defensive coordinator in Denver, who ended up winning the deal. Because they didn't sign Zach Allen, their next kind of tier guy, they had earmarked that money, and then they panicked signed Draymond Jones. And we saw how well that worked. So that's been a history of their mistakes. When they don't have a good kind of backup plan, last year they had a much better backup plan. Cooper Kupp fell in their lap. DeMarcus Lawrence fell through the cracks. You got to hope. I think at this point, the difference is Schneider, I think, would have a pretty realistic expectation of Crosby. I think they would realize, like, when they were in on Zach Allen, it was probably them and one other team. When they were in on Zeidler, it seemed like it was them and one other team. I think they would have a plan, a pretty coherent plan. I think Crosby is more of a luxury for them. I think that they realize what he can do for that defensive line. I don't think there's anyone else, even Greenard, who would have that kind of impact. So I think they would be a little more realistic this time. But again, yeah, you're right to have that fear. Like, that's been a history of their mistakes. Gabe Jackson and Benson Mayoa and guys like that, where they just didn't have a proper plan. I think with this market, between the draft and free agency, there's a number of edges out there. And I don't think they need that. Like, even Kyle Van Noy is out there. Like, that's a guy they could look at. Mike McDonald's had some success, but he's a little older now, so I hope that's not the option. But I think there's just a number of that, like, tier 3 pass rusher that they would be totally fine bringing in.
On Greenard, what would you give for Greenard before I move on? Because it feels as if that's a conversation that passes by because there's so much attention on Crosby. He's a good player, Jeff. I imagine he's a character fit. He's always felt that way. I can remember in the draft there was always very positive reviews on him as a person. I've always felt he's a little bit rigid and robotic in his movements. He's not a limbed athlete, but he gets the job done. He can beat the edge. He is strong and powerful. I don't know. Like, I suppose it could be. I'd put him in the, could be a lot worse category. But he's not necessarily someone who's going to get me, rushing to the internet machine to see what everyone's saying about the reaction in a way that Maxx Crosby would. And I kind of sense if you're not going to get Crosby, like, there's a level of like, you've got Myles Garrett who's ahead of everybody else, and then there's like maybe Micah Parsons is just a notch behind that, and then there's kind of like a small pool of the next best rushers, of which Maxx Crosby's in. I think if you're not picking from that next section from where Crosby's in, you might as well just do the whole let's give DeMarcus a call and see if we can sweeten the pie a little bit here, and let's just look in a different direction, which I'm going to come on to next. That's how I feel about it. If Jonathan Greenard was sat there, he's cut, you can go and get him. It's not going to cost you a comp pick. Count me in. But if it's not that, Jeff, I don't want to give up a round 2. Even in this draft class, I don't want to give up a round 2 and a round 3 pick for him, really.
No, I think the most I would give was the round 3 because it's the last pick of the round 3 and it's closer to a 4th. But you got to think that as much as we can kind of take knocks on this draft, the Seahawks are going to probably have 5 to 6 starters to replace at some level. And Daniel Jeremiah put out a tweet, and Rob, you've had your big board. The sweet spot of this is kind of edge, corner, receiver. And I think Seattle has all 3 of those needs. And so the end of like this draft doesn't have maybe like the pure like alpha number 1 receiver. But a lot of guys ran well at the combine receiver. Like, you might get a pretty good receiver to replace a Rashid Shaheed at round 3. You might need that. You might need a running back there. So I'm not dying to give up more picks. They're already down their 4th and their 5th, and I'm guessing they're going to trade out of 32 ultimately to kind of get that 4th and 5th back, or at least some of that back. I think they're best off keeping as many picks as they can because they're going to need those to replace some of these guys, especially you're probably not signing Walker or Shaheed, and I don't think you're signing Mafe or Woolen, and I think Kobe Bryant's probably a bit of a long shot too. I'm not looking to get rid of picks unless you're getting an elite player.
Can I say, if they do trade out from 32, there is few feelings better, Jeff, than sort of knowing, okay, you haven't picked in round 1. You're going to pick within the first, let's say, 5 or 6 picks of round 2, and you get the whole night to think about who they could pick from who's left. Like, it's almost like resetting the draft. Like, if you're picking 6th overall, you've got like, oh, okay, there's only like so many options it could be. Let's have a good old conversation about him. And then like if you trade down from 32, you get to have that feeling just at the top of round 2 instead for one night. I just found that's quite it's a great, when they drafted Paul Richardson, it was interesting to know, okay, they've traded out from 32. Let's see what they do the next day. I remember that being quite an exciting thought. So if they do trade out from 32 again, even in a bad draft class, it will be, I think if you're a geek about the draft like I am, it's kind of cool. So I want to talk about free. I want to talk about Maxx Crosby a bit more, but I just want to shift straight to this and get your super chats in if you want to join in the conversation. Jeremy Fowler made me consider something, Jeff, on Brock and Soul when he was speaking. Like, he said, he kind of referenced who's going to leave and all of that. And he said, Mike McDonald likes to think outside the box. And maybe there's just something that we're not considering, that if they get a bit weaker at one area, they'll pivot to another position and they will exploit that instead. And I was trying to think, who could he possibly be talking about? Like, I'm trying to think are we talking about more hybrid players here? Is it even a position on defense? Is it like, hey, let's go and improve this area of our offense? And if we take a little bit step back here, maybe we could take a step forward on offense instead. I was trying to work out who it would be. So this is a two-part question. Because like, one, it's what do you think that could be if there is something? Because at the end of the day, I don't think Jeremy Fowler was reporting that. It was kind of just more chucking that thinking out loud thought into the world. But I want to actually just jump to this as well. Like, I was trying to think who would be an out-of-the-box free agent signing for the Seahawks, Jeff. And I came up with a name. And it's a name that no one has talked about so far. And I want to see.
I'm very curious to hear where you go with this.
I'm going to give you one attempt to guess who it is. I want to see if you can guess who I'm thinking of. I don't think you're going to get any chance of getting it, by the way. And it's a big name. It's a big
Mike Evans.
It's Mike Evans. You got it.
Actually,
you and I are we just think so similar on so many things.
It's funny. I just pulled up Mike Clay's free agent list, and I was looking at I don't think it's going to cost that much.
The thing is, though, this is what I'm thinking, right? So let me sort of flesh it out. What did they do so well last year? They signed 2 veteran dogs, like players who are ultra professional, absolutely desperate to win, set a standard, driven. And if they lose one of those players, they might want to find a replacement for the alpha mentality that they're losing as much as anything. And that's Mike Evans. Like, Mike Evans wants to win. Mike Evans is the way Mike Evans dragged himself out to finish off that 1,000-yard season the year before last when he wasn't healthy, and the way that he sort of celebrated, like, I want that. When he sets his sights on something, he goes for it. If he's going to leave Tampa Bay, Jeff, he's leaving Tampa Bay to win a ring. He's not leaving the place he's always been and will always be a part of the furniture with Tampa Bay unless he wants to win. And I just thought, do you know what? On a year's contract, why the hell not? Like, it's different. It's a different type of player. He's obviously not what he used to be, but he's had some injury issues. Man, I don't know. I've always liked Mike Evans, and Sam Darnold to me is the kind of quarterback, like, he's gonna throw some passes that are to be contested every now and again. And who wins them better than those contested catches than Mike Evans? So I just wondered, you've got some cap space. Would they put a call in? Do you bring him in? Is that a possibility? I just think he kind of fits the mentality there. By the way, there's some breaking news. Drake Thomas has been signed to a new 2-year deal. Drake Thomas has agreed terms on a 2-year deal worth $8 million with a chance to make $9 million. So
that's
Drake
a good deal
Thomas,
because the RFA tender was higher.
So that's a good deal. That's good news, Jeff.
Yeah.
Drake, can you let us have our Mike Evans conversation, please? Go on, Jeff. Give us a thought on that, and we'll come back to Drake Thomas in a minute.
I was just scouring Mike Clay's free agent board when you were talking, and I was trying to find the name, and he stuck it because I think it was Fowler or someone else put out what he was looking for in free agency, and it was like a winning team, a good offensive coordinator, a good quarterback, and I don't know what he would think of Brian Fleury, so that might take him out of consideration because nobody knows him. He's a mystery. But look, if you're Mike Evans and you see the team that just won the Super Bowl and you saw what JSN just did, it'd be pretty hard not to want to play there. And look, people have wondered, he's beaten up, whatever. I was at the Tampa-Atlanta game late in the year in December. I was in Florida. I ended up driving to Tampa. He was the best player on the field. And they ended up blowing that game in the fourth quarter. Like, Bijan Robinson was incredible. But Mike Evans was just like, they had no answer for him because he was just jumping over dudes. And he's not the fastest guy. And it fits so well with what they want to do, get the ball down the field. And they're not a great red zone team. My initial thought, maybe when you said them, like, maybe they'll just keep reinvesting in the offensive line and maybe they negate the running back. But look, if they want to go get Mike Evans, and I don't know the number they had for Shaheed. that would be just so logical. He's probably been he's already won a Super Bowl. He won with Brady, and if they want to make that pivot and not spend on a mediocre edge rusher, make your red zone offense great, because he's one of the best red zone players in the league. If you want to watch a fun game, just put on highlights of Evans during that Falcons game. I think it was week 15. I think it was week 15 last year. The guy's just dominant, and he's looked so good. And that was what Tampa fell off a cliff. He was hurt most of the year last year. Him and JSN and Cooper, like without tight ends, that would be such a fun offense, man.
I just think you have to treat free agency as like, who is the best opportunity to improve your football team here and now? And too often in free agency, you are taking gambles on players who have not proved a lot, or that they're based on potential. Like the 4 years into the career, and they're still potential-based players. They're not proven ability, because otherwise they get re-signed. It's very rare that you get a chance to sign a proven quality player. And, Mike McDonald likes to use the term force multipliers. I think Mike Evans is a force multiplier, and there aren't many of those in this free agency class. So I don't know how likely it is, Jeff. He may well get an offer. Like the Bills might want to sign him. I know they've traded for DJ Moore, but the Bills might think, well, we can put him outside still, and that'd be kind of fun for him to go and play with Josh Allen and try and win a Super Bowl for Buffalo in their new stadium. Or maybe he wants to go to the 49ers and play there and play for Kyle Shanahan and all of that. That'd be quite easy to imagine. If he likes warm weather, he gets to go and play in California instead. Maybe one of the Texas teams, because he was at Texas A&M. I don't know. Like it's the opposite end of the country, and I have no idea whether he would want to go and play in Seattle. It just feels to me like if you're looking for like impact free agents.
So I found the list. This is what Fowler said. The 4 criteria he had is a QB he believes in, and Darnold got a lot of attention last year.
He is a Super Bowl winner now. So
chance at a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
hard to argue that.
No.
Promise of high volume touches. That'd be an interesting one with JSN. And then a top shelf OC. So I think the OC question is probably, they don't probably know much about Brian Fleury, but look, I think between Mike McDonald and the Super Bowl, that's
who do you think is a top? I mean, from those opportunities, that would seem to me like, who could he realistically say? Okay, maybe the Patriots, because I guess you could say that they have a top flight OC and a quarterback and a chance to win. They were in the Super Bowl, so Patriots would be one. Like the Bills, if you want to call their new head coach a top coordinator, I don't know about whether you would or not. And then I'm kind of like looking down the list.
I thought the Bills before today. Like that was the logical one to me.
Denver?
I had heard Denver is not an option because him and Cortland Sutton had the same position.
That's a good point. What about
maybe, but
who's that?
Chargers, maybe.
Potentially, yeah. That's an interesting fit, isn't it? And they have got a kind of cool OC now. And Niners, maybe.
Some people had wondered about the Niners, but like, I don't know. I feel like that's not what that team is missing.
I think it's a good point though. Like if they'd earmarked X amount for Rashid Shaheed, and okay, we can't bring him back. Like, where's that money going to go now? Unless they just give it to Ken Walker, like you would think, okay, well maybe pivoting to Mike Evans for a year is a thing to do. I just think do I think they're going to sign him? I don't know. I just thought it's a name that I was kind of doing my list. I wanted to write some names down, Jeff, to bring to the table. And I saw him and I thought, do you know what? That made me think for a second there. And I just thought, do you know, of all the names that I wrote down, that's the one that I think, yes, give me some of that. So I thought that was interesting. Anyway, so Drake Thomas has signed. That's good news. I wanted to ask you quickly, Maxx Crosby. Where do you think Maxx Crosby is going to end up?
My guess would be the Bears.
There's been a lot of buzz about that. Has Lane Johnson's tweet not swayed you at all towards the
No, I think my guess is he's messing around. But look, I think the Eagles are going to ultimately sign Jalen Phillips, who they know is really good in that defense. He transformed their defense. Look, I wouldn't be surprised. It'd be very Howie Roseman to make a deal like that. But I think the Bears they cleared out a lot of cap room today. They got a second round pick somehow for DJ Moore. which was preposterous trade. I think now they're loaded with the capital. They got the quarterback on the rookie contract. I think Ben Johnson's going to want a guy like that.
Yeah, I think Bears. I mean, I did a mock draft the other day, and I thought, and I put the Bears trading for Maxx Crosby. There's been a lot of smoke there, hasn't there? And when the people were not mentioning Seattle and like people like Albert Breer have kind of said, yeah, they're not quite as in it anymore and stuff like that. I kind of wanted to think, yeah, that's just the Seahawks keeping the cards close to the chest. But the more and more people talk about the Bears, you just think, yeah, it seems to make a degree of sense. And it'd be an interesting fit for him. Like he can go there. Like if you helped the Bears get back to the Super Bowl and something, that'd be kind of a cool thing to do. It feels like a city that would fit for him.
Defense where it's an upfield. Like Dennis Allen runs a scheme that he's very clearly in. And the thing with the Bears is they have a lot of tradable players. Like Tremaine Edmonds is a guy. I think he would save $15 million on the cap. He was a top free agent a couple of years ago, and it's the kind of guy like the Raiders should be looking at. They don't have a Tremaine Edmonds, and he's overpaid right now, and he hasn't lived up to the contract they gave him. But they just have DJ Moore was a guy that people thought maybe the Raiders would want him. They don't have a receiver. So the hard thing for Seattle is they're not only picking lower than these teams, but who are the players they can really give up? I can't really think of anyone that you would want to subtract from their team right now. Like I don't think it's Christian Haynes. Like I don't think that moves the needle. And Kubiak obviously know this roster a little bit better, but like Seahawks don't have a lot of positions of like luxury and depth they can kind of take away from right now, unless they're trading on Jalen Milroe. I don't think there's much there.
Yeah, I agree with you. I also when he is traded, I'll be very interested to know what the compensation is. And I thought it was Mike Garofalo was saying on Puck Sports that he thinks that ultimately the package will be similar to the Raiders wanted a package similar to the Parsons one. Then it kind of felt like they weren't going to get it. Now it kind of feels a little bit like maybe the compromise is it's going to be a little bit closer to that than perhaps people were thinking at the start of the week, and that maybe the Seahawks have just decided like we can't give up 2 firsts and like. I know that Brian was on Seattle Sports talking about like Derek Hall. I never in a million years, Jeff, could I imagine them doing that. Like never in a million years. Like they can't get rid of Derek Hall and 2 firsts for Maxx Crosby. I mean, that's just.
No, it's just like
throwing Sam Darnold as well. Like eventually you've got to say enough. Like we just can't compete with this deal. Like there's no way.
No, because then you're just ending up slightly upgrading the situation you might be in now, and then you're out your first round picks.
You've got no first round, and you've got to replace Maffei and Hall, potentially Lawrence as well. Like,
you need to have a group. Like look at all the last Super Bowl winners: Seattle. The Eagles, what they did to the Chiefs, back in the day, what the Bucs did to the Chiefs, even the Chiefs with Frank Clark and Chris Jones. You need to have volumes of these guys.
Yeah, I think the Bears seem to make the most sense, but I just wonder if there's like another team around them in that area that might be able to do something. But the Bears seem to, especially now the Bears got an extra 2nd round pick, so I can't believe they prized their 2nd rounder out of.
How did that Bills GM like? I don't know how that guy got promoted. Like that trade was terrible. Really
bad trade. Grateful that we're not having to analyze a horrific trade at the moment, similar to that. Okay, right. Before we get on to, we've got 1 super chats. Keep them coming in, and we will get to them shortly. Before we get on to free agents who maybe would intrigue you and I, Jeff, the Trent McDuffie trade. I wanted to throw an angle your way. Like Todd McShay on his podcast today started, he had like a 100 player big board. But before he got into that, he talked about the McDuffie trade. And he said, this could be the last year for Matt Stafford. Could also be like the last year or 2 for Sean McVay, he said. So he kind of feels as if the Rams are all in because it's not just the head coach, not just the quarterback, the head coach might want to take a break soon. He's just had another child. I thought, and you and I talked about this, Jeff, I thought McVay looked incredibly stressed at the end of the season. I thought he looked on edge in a way that he hasn't before. He seems to have taken the loss to Seattle so badly. Like it seemed to make him physically ill, the loss to the Seahawks. The way he's talked about it, the way that his players have talked about it, you can see some projection from him onto them. They seem to be really suffering from that. And I think I think the reason for that is that he knows in his head that he needs to take a step back soon. And he's eager to go out on the kind of high that, he'll be able to say, I won 2 and that's it. And now I'm going to take a break. And I find that fascinating, Jeff. I would not want to be in that position. And the Rams fans might go, well, it's kind of fun that they feel the pressure of time and they're doing all these big moves. I think when you feel like you're up against the clock, Jeff, that's when you make mistakes. I think that's what cost the Seahawks at the end of the LOB era. I think it cost them as they were chasing that lost Super Bowl after that LOB era finished. And I think it's a bad place to be. I actually think their aggression could come back to bite them on the arse. And I'm quite enthused, actually, as a Seahawks fan, that they may feel that internal pressure to get this done ASAP.
So one of the things I'd heard at the Combine, we had some people come to our Brian had a booth set up on Radio Row, and we had a bunch of people, and some of the people that me and you have talked about over the years came to our booth to just chat about the Seahawks, and they see the Hawk Blogger logo and they'd come talk. And one of the pretty national guys who's been pretty big in Colin Cowherd's world came to our table, and he was telling us the feeling in the league is the Rams are gotten very arrogant. And I think that kind of fit into maybe they were talking about them not coming to the Combine, but it felt like, because we were talking about the proposed rule change and how that was sitting. It just seemed like they were just like depressed from what happened. And rather than addressing what their problems were, they had excuses, and they were trying to change the rule, the 2-point conversion, and whining about the refs. And it seemed like that cost them first place, and it cost them ultimately the playoffs. And rather than look, cornerback was the position they were deficient. So on one hand, you should credit them for making the move, but doesn't it feel a lot like what happened with the Jimmy Graham trade, where they're not giving up a Maxx Unger, obviously, but that was the reaction to really the one play. And they didn't have a red zone weapon, so they're like, let's go get the best red zone weapon. And that was like the beginning of the end. I don't think this trade has anywhere that kind of implications, but they traded a first and multiple picks, a third next year, for the right to pay Trent McDuffie $30 million a year. Not $30 million total, $30 million a year. And McDuffie's a very good slot corner. He's been an all-pro. But the weird part is they just paid Quentin Lake a new pretty big extension, and he's their slot corner. So is McDuffie now going to be outside? Is this just responding to JSN's dominance against them in the NFC Championship? I don't really kind of get. I've one figured like maybe more of an outside corner would fit, and they have the 13th pick. Maybe they'll still address that position, but it seemed like pretty reactionary. And look, I wasn't screaming like when they got Von Miller that one year. I'm just like that sucks. And when they got Jalen Ramsey, even though I thought the price was pretty crazy, I was just like, ugh. I wasn't feeling that. Like I think JSN could still do pretty well against a Trent McDuffie. I think the outside corners where I have questions, and now are they going to move Lake to safety? Are they going to have McDuffie play outside? I'm not really sure. And again, the rule. Again, I'm not trying to knock McDuffie. He's like a very good player, like all pro. Like every team would be excited to get him. But like if you're Seattle and you trade that for him when you have Witherspoon, like it's kind of a little weird. But I don't know. I couldn't get over the fact that I kept hearing from people, and you've seen it with the actions. Like the Rams just did not know how to handle adversity. And look, on one hand, like again, I commend Les Snead for being aggressive with Matt Stafford, 38 years old, and in the end of this window. And people are speculating like once Stafford leaves, maybe McVay leaves, and maybe they don't care about these picks anymore. But I don't know. They seemed this whole thing like they lose that Week 16 game rather than addressing their issues of blowing a 16-point lead. They whine and blame the refs. And what happens the next week? They lose that game to Atlanta, and that costs them the chance to play for the 1 seed. And even in the playoffs, McVay didn't come out and said, like, oh, McDonald did a really good job or Darnold did an amazing job. He came out and tried to blame that fortuitous bust. And it seems like they've been just kind of like, I don't know if butthurt's the right word, or they've been weird. And I don't know. I feel like if the opposite happened, Seattle would have been like, wow, McVay did a great job. Like, let's tighten up our team. I don't know if they would have made a deal like this, but it kind of reminds me of the reactionary result to the Jimmy Graham trade. Maybe I'm putting 2 and 2 together, but I don't see that as like that's what's going to solve their problems.
Somebody has mentioned in the chat that they were worried that the Rams are going to trade for Maxx Crosby, and I said it won't. There's no chance of that, and I'm going to explain why quickly. First of all, the Rams have $22 million in effective cap space, and as Curtis will tell you, like about 10 million of that gets earmarked for other things. So theoretically, we've got about 12. They've not got that much at all. And they are JC Horn, when he signed his new contract with the Panthers, the next cap hit was $24 million for the next year. So when Trent McDuffie signs his record-breaking contract, it may take that much of a cap hit up for the Rams. It won't necessarily be this year, but it will be the year after. So they're going to be, and I would guess probably around 10 million at best will go to Trent McDuffie this year. So again, you've kind of used a large chunk of your cap space. To acquire Maxx Crosby is like another $30 million. And that's before you consider that there are numerous players who are out of contract. You know, Cam Curl's out of contract. The backup quarterback's out of contract. They have a numerous sort of depth players that are out of contract. Kobe Durant's out of contract. They've said that they want to re-sign their right tackle to an extension. They've had to put a lot of money in escrow already for players like Matthew Stafford, and they're going to have to. Oh yeah, I forgot about the main one. The main one I've completely forgotten about, the Puka Nacua contract that they're going to have to do at this point this year. Like, what we have to remember about these teams is, as rich as the Rams owner is, and he is, that they can't just do everything. And I think if the 13th overall pick was on the table for the Raiders, we'd have probably seen that trade done by now. Like the Rams are in a position where they are being both aggressive and somewhat sensible here. Like, they've traded away the 29th pick, but they are going to have to add some cheap talent at some point. They have to actually draft some players to fill out the various positions. So I'd imagine that number 13 is going to be spent on a player in the draft who can be an impact player potentially for them, whether that's offensive line, receiver, another cornerback, whatever it is. A safety, like why not replace Cam Curl with Dylan Thieneman if you can, somebody like that. You know, that'd be amazing for them. Yeah, you know, that's a horrible thought, but that would be an amazing pick for them. That's what I think they are going to do. Like, the idea that they would trade 13 and their next pick in next year's draft for Maxx Crosby, and also they would presumably have to then trade away Byron Young as part of that package. Like, why would you do that? Like, Byron Young and Jared Verse were amongst like the top. I think they were both in the top 10 for pressures last year. Like, you have many, many more needs than upgrading from Byron Young or Jared Verse. Like, they are a very good football team, but they have deficiencies in other areas. They now need to add talent to those other areas, not shuffle the deck chairs on the Titanic of their pass rush. Like, they don't need to do that. So it's not going to be the Rams, but he will. It feels as if in the next 72 hours he might get traded, Maxx Crosby. So refreshing X is like, I think, on both Jeff and my.
Yeah, if you hear me clicking, that's probably what I'm looking at.
Having a look to see what happens. Right. So free agents. I'm going to tell you some of the free agents that I've kind of put a ring around, Jeff. And you tell me who you might think. These are just the names that kind of. I looked at the 100 list that ESPN put out yesterday. What's the guy's name? Is like Matt Bowen or something like that?
Matt Bowen.
Yeah, maybe. So he put this list out. The names I go from 100 to 1 because I always think like they're probably not going to be looking at like the top 5 or so. So I would start at the bottom and then work onwards. So Al-Qadim Muhammad had 11.5 sacks as a specialist pass rusher last year. Is that somebody who could be cheap? He's 31 years old. Aiden Hutchinson's like petitioning for him to come back to Detroit. Is that somebody that could do a job for a year? Maybe. I think of the running backs, Jeff. If this player is cheaper than the others, I'm not against the idea of just seeing if Rashad White's got something in there, as a pass catcher out the backfield as well. I'm not against that one. I'm interested in Tyler Algier as a thumper, but I went and watched some of his tape this week when I had 5 minutes, and he's exceptional on short distance like conversions, but he doesn't have a second gear. Like sometimes it's quite frustrating that he gets oh wow, it's such a physical run, but there's nothing after that. It's kind of like 6 yards in a cloud of dust when he needs at his best. And Rashad White maybe just has that little bit of untapped potential. Joseph Asai at Cincinnati could be somebody like just can Mike McDonald bring the best out of him. Arnold Ebiketie was down at 78 on the list, and Asai was 80. And I'm thinking, like, Boy Mafe is like way up here, and like Asai and Ebiketie are way down here. And I'm thinking that could be better value. Apparently, they liked Ebiketie in the draft. It was like him or Mafe. Nick Cross as a say. I've always liked Nick Cross. Like when he was at Maryland, I liked Nick Cross. I liked what I've seen of him in the pros. He was at 57. And then Monteric Brown at 54. Like, I don't know if they're going to spend big on cornerbacks or anything like that. And I wouldn't want to spend big on Monteric Brown. If his market was only so-so, I'd be semi-interested there. That was a player I really liked in the draft. And it seems like he came on a long way in Jacksonville last year. So I'd sort of put a call in to see what his market is. They're the names that stuck out for me. They're not going to get anybody excited, Jeff. But I think that's kind of what free agency is about. It's about finding the gems.
Yeah, that's kind of the areas I expect them to look at. Like, we just don't. I think they're earmarking most of their big money towards JSN and Witherspoon. Again, it's not going to be the most exciting free agent period unless they do something off the radar like a Mike Evans. But I've been kind of looking at who are those that next tier of guys that either hit their valuations or. So guys I looked at, Bradley Chubb is one I wonder. Again, I think he can play a very similar role to Mafe, and I think because he was cut, I don't think he considers into the comp pick thing. I don't like the comp pick thing. I hope that's not their approach, but I wondered about him. A couple of Ebiketie was one I've wondered about. When John Boyle did the Inside the Draft Room article when they drafted Mafe, he talked about their reaction when Ebiketie went a couple picks before. So Ebiketie was considered slightly higher. I believe I'm guessing the team had him slightly higher in the same tier. So if Mafe cost $18 million and he cost $8 million, they might like that trade-off. There's some other guy, Kwity Paye is another one who's the first-round pick a couple years ago. He's more of a guy who hasn't lived up to his potential. He shows some flashes, but it's just not all there. I wonder if they put him with a McDonald, if that could clean him up a little bit. He was a first-round pick. Cool story from Michigan. Muhammad's an interesting one you brought up. Those were the edge rushers. Kyle Van Noy is a free agent. Same with Khalil Mack. But I think Khalil Mack will still get a pretty big deal, even though he's 35 years old. But he was in Jesse Minter's defense and did really well. This is the same defense. So I wonder if that's an option for them. And then, I'm looking at the receivers. I've heard some talk of Juwan Jennings, he's coming from Brian Fleury. They would have a relationship, but they talk about good character and no drama. They pay him. That does not fit. You mentioned some of the running backs I would probably have mentioned as well. One I wondered about is Brian Robinson. And so Brian Robinson was with Fleury. I think he's going to be pretty cheap to sign. We ran into one of the 49ers team employees. They had mentioned maybe you guys will get Robinson. They liked him a lot in San Francisco last year. But I don't think – Algier, again, for me, it comes down to price. I don't want to pay $9 million for Tyler Algier. But if you need a short-term replacement for Charbonnet, I think what you just said, I remember when the Seahawks played in Atlanta, Algier was able to convert some of those third and shorts, fourth and shorts. I think he's more of a Charbonnet, but then you're going to need to draft speed in the draft because obviously Walker was such a home run hitter. So if they go the other way and they try to replace a third down back, maybe Kenneth Gainwell is an option. He played really well, but he's a smaller receiving back. He's not an every down back. And then, again, there's some safeties I don't mind. Corner, if they end up not signing Josh Jobe, one of the corners I don't mind is Jamel Dean from Tampa. He gets hurt a lot, but he's a bigger playmaking. Kind of reminds me of a more refined Reek Woolen, but obviously doesn't have that freakish athletic ability. But he's a good outside cornerback, and I don't think you can go into this draft without a starting quarterback signed, which is why I think the most likely thing to happen is Josh Jobe. But really, those are the names. And then I wondered if some of the guards fall through. Maybe that's an option because one of the spots there's a lot of depth in this free agent pool is guard. But I think they're far more likely to go into the draft hoping to get that. So, again, I don't love the free agent class. Safety is an interesting. Nick Cross is an interesting idea because Kobe Bryant's someone we know they tried to sign. Brady Henderson reported in August, and Brady said recently on a show with Mike Sando that they were double the number away from him. So if they were he was valued at $7 million, they would have thought he would have thought he was valued at 14. And the safety market in the draft is really good. So I wonder if one of these free agent safeties, the market falls through on them. And that's how they were able to get a Julian Love. That's how they were able to get Abram Bennett. So there's something. Nick Cross is a really interesting name. Jaquan Brisker is kind of an aggressive blitzer that can do some of the stuff they did. There's a lot of safeties in free agency where that price point might get pretty low.
Yeah, I'm interested. I think Brian, is it Brian Cook's? My memory's terrible.
Yeah,
I liked him in the draft as well, and there's a talk that he might get paid quite a lot. And then maybe Bryant's next, and then Cross is like, but how many teams are going to pay for like if the Jets are all in on paying? It sounds like the Jets are going to go mad and pay a safety. But then who else is going to do that? Like it's like is it like one and then everybody else kind of has to sit and wait? It'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I think I'm with you. Josh Jobe, let's finish with that, unless something else crops up in the next 5-10 minutes. And the super chats, we've got to do them as well. But let's finish with like the players who may leave. Now, Josh Jobe, I think you're right, is the one that if you bring him back, it takes the pressure off. I don't think, Jeff, that replacing Reek, I think as long as you bring somebody in with a lot of upside, but needs work on, how is that any different to Reek Woolen? Like that's Reek Woolen basically described even now 4 years into his career. And this is a deep cornerback class. Like you will have options potentially at 32. You will have options at 64. You may have some decent options with your third round pick. Like I think in each round, Jeff, you're going to be able to, what I think the Seahawks are going to be able to do in this draft is go, okay, like we can get a cornerback in any of these rounds. Like what are the other things we want to do? Okay, so if you decide that you've got everything done and cornerback's best at 32, okay, fine. But if you wanted to do something different at 32, you could still get a corner at 64. Like, do you know what I mean? Like you can plan where are the shelves? The shelf at cornerback is like a lot better than the shelf at some of these other positions. So they can go into the draft quite relaxed to getting a corner. It's some of these other positions. It's like what do you do at running back? Like that like you basically got 3 running backs and a massive cliff. Like the cliff is like something in Yosemite. Like it's enormous. Like you have to, if you want a running back, you better take one early. That's one thought. I think it's quite reasonably thick at receiver. I think you can get receivers all the way into day 3 in this draft. I don't think that's much of a problem. I think the pass rushers, it's tough.
I'm struggling to get excited by the edge rush.
Yeah.
Like I was at their podiums and I was doing interviews, and there wasn't one where I was just like, I know like Daniel Jeremiah mentioned there's like a ton of volume. It's a great draft in the edge rusher. I don't know, man. I read your stuff. I was down there interviewing them. There was not a lot that got me to it. I did the corners the next day, and the volume of people to talk to and the energy and the amount of options that I just thought fit was so different than when I interviewed the edge rushers. And that got me invested in the draft. But that like day 2 slot of corners just fits the Seahawks so well. The edge rush in day 2, like I know Malachi Lawrence is getting some people excited, and I feel like
he's going to go top 50.
Yeah, I feel like these guys are getting pushed up quite a bit, and he's actually a pretty intriguing prospect. I don't find value at 32, and I don't really find value at 64 with the edge rushers. So I love what you can do with the corners if you stay at 32. I love what you can do with the corners if you move off 32 and move down and kind of get ahead of that drop. Or you sit at 64 and wait and see who falls through. And I think there's lots of options at corner. You sign one corner in free agency. Maybe that's Joe, maybe that's someone else. And then you draft the other one with maybe the second-round pick. I think that sets up that group perfectly well. But you're right. Running back is a really risky spot. Like I know Tony Pauline said they're going to sign a mid-level running back in free agency, and that's probably it. And then probably draft someone because they like Charbonnet a lot. But
the running back draft stinks. Like
it sucks. Like, are you going to take Jadarian Price at 32?
Well, yeah, it's hard to do that after the way he tested because he tested well, but not amazingly well. I think
that's the thing. It was kind of meh.
Yeah, I was expecting him to test better than he did. Like Mike Washington tested amazingly, but like, do you trade down to 40 and take him? That still feels a little bit like the thing I fear with Mike Washington is I wonder a little bit like it's one of those where 32 is too early. Will he last to 64? I think he will. I think if you want him, you can get him at 64. We will see. I think Malachi Lawrence, the only question I had, Jeff, was like, he plays for UCF. Like, let's see how the testing is. And then he jumps. So I got the numbers. I pulled them up. He ran a 4.52. He ran a 1.5. Anything in the 1.5s is a 10-yard split is fantastic.
Yeah.
So a 1.59 split, a 40-inch vertical, and a 10-10 broad. He's got 34-inch arms. Like it's like, well, like it's like tick, tick, tick. Like he bends and straightens better than any of the other rushers in this class. He's got the length and the size that a lot of them don't have. Like, what else do you need to see? I wouldn't be surprised if, I said top 50, Jeff. He could go a lot earlier than people think because he's just a better is a more upside prospect than pretty much all of these other edge rushers in the whole of the class. Not just like in his range, like there isn't anybody like him in this class. So he's going to go a lot earlier than people think. And then you kind of think, well, how much are you prepared to compromise? Like Cassius Howell, his attitude, his playing mentality, his character, perfect fit. But he has T-Rex arms. And when he rushes like a T-Rex. Like the arms don't get used, Jeff. Like he just tries to, he's like an armless man trying to go around the edge. Like that's how he plays because his arms are so short. He doesn't even use his arms most of the time. He just tries to dip and like try and work his way around them without using it. That's such an unorthodox style. It's either going to be amazing and he's going to be like this like unique player in the NFL, or he's going to be it's just not going to be effective at all. And then you kind of go down, and I'm looking at the edge list, Jeff. I just can't get excited. Would I take a flyer on Danny Dennis Sutton at 64? Yeah, I don't know if he'll last that long because again, like there's others who have dropped. And he's risen. So I don't know if he's going to be there for you at the end of round 2. I don't know what you can do there, which is why I think you've got to platoon it in free agency and just let the draft come to you.
But yeah, we did a mock draft in our show on Saturday, and we ended up taking Danny Dennis Sutton at 64, and it didn't feel good to me. Like I didn't love it. I felt like we pushed him up the board, and we were walking through the combine floor last Tuesday, the day before the edge guys were going, and we ran into one of the top draft guys in the NFL, a guy everyone would know on the show. And Brian asked him outright, like, what do you think of a couple guys? And that was one of them. And he said scouts thought he's really good in a straight line, but that was kind of it. And he thought he would test well, but he didn't think he was dynamic enough, and he thought he was just more of a straight line rusher, and he didn't know how well that would project. And again, when defensive ends typically don't go in the first round, there's not a great success rate. There's maybe come diamonds in the rough, but what the Seahawks don't need is another rotational end. Like that's not a thing that's going to get me excited or move the needle that much. So I'd much rather use that pick on a running back or receiver or a guard.
Danny Dennis Sutton had, like in the first game of the season against Nevada, he was really good, like really, really good. And you thought this is a guy who could work his way into round 1. And then I was watching a lot of Penn State early in the season, and he never really built off that game. He was still playing okay, but he didn't build off that game. Then he disappeared for about a month, and then finished the season strongly. Where he was like having splash plays. Wasn't like you didn't feel him in every game, but he was he'd have a sack a game. It just doesn't feel like someone who's going to come into the league, Jeff. And he feels like someone who's a one contract player, reaches free agency. You know, there'll be a little bit of maybe just a change of scenery, and he could turn it around. That's kind of the thing. That's the sense I get with Danny Dennis. So there's something there, but it's just something that holds you back. What I was going to say about cornerbacks is like for me, like the cornerback draft, Jeff. This is where it's at for me. Like you've got,
I love the corner class.
Like Avian Terrell for me is the best cornerback in the draft, and people are going like, I think Daniel Jeremiah had him at 30th in his list, and I'm thinking if he's there at 30, I'm moving up 2 spots like to go and get that guy. Like he's really good. And that shouldn't be a surprise given who his brother is. I think Brandon Cisse, his sort of physical profile. I heard people saying that he might be the second cornerback drafted because like the physical potential there, Jeff, is really good. He just can't play. Like when you watch him like in zone, he's like, I don't really know what to do. And I'm thinking, look, if you could just have like the guidance,
so much zone defense.
Like if you had like the right guidance, you think everything's there. Like when his mirror, his transition, like his change of direction, like everything's there. He just needs the coaching to get up to that level. I don't, and it's not like you think this is impossible. It's just like his diagnosing of plays is just a little bit off. But he played in a tough situation last year. Colton Hood's very physical. He's so sticky in coverage. Mansour Delane's probably not going to be that. I think he's a good player, but I think he's a little bit overrated. Jamard McCoy, I think he's got the same agent as Shamar Stewart. And
and he's not doing anything in the offseason.
His agent is letting him down, and that seems to be the feeling in the league. And then he's so excited. Okay, that's the first group, and then if you got to round 2, like these are players, Jeff, that I'd happily be interested in, like Ezekiel Masters. I don't know if you've had a chance to watch him from California. Wow, like
no, I would have liked to talk to him.
Ezekiel Masters. I've only watched him since the combine. Like he was not on my radar. And then in the combine workout session, I thought he just stood out for me. And then I watched the tape and it's like, this guy's really good. Like he is really, really good. Like he's not flawless. He's not the biggest guy in the world. He's not the fastest guy in the world. He is immensely talented. Ezekiel Masters at California, really good player. Chris Johnson, I think he's getting a bit. People are pumping Chris Johnson up a bit too much for my liking, but I think he's probably not going to be there at 64. But he's someone who's going to go on day 2. I tell you what, I really like Jaden Kennedy from Oregon. Like, he's more of a slot guy. Like, he isn't. It's not for the Seahawks, but as a slot guy, I thought if you need a slot, like there's him and Keontae Scott at Miami, who's just like a sledgehammer.
Man, he had the biggest crowd, Keontae Scott, of any of the.
He's like Cam Chancellor, but a cornerback. Like, he's incredible. They can't cover for Toffee, Jeff, but if you want him like running forwards, like hitting someone in the face, like he's really, really good at that. And then, like I think sort of round 3 range, which I suppose could be 64, Dalen Everett, Julian Neal. I've got D'Angelo Pons in that range because I just think he's just so small. I just don't, I don't know how I think it's just going to be too much of a struggle for him at that size. Malik Muhammad, Keith Abney, Thaddeus Dixon. Like, I wish Thaddeus Dixon was not. He's got like 7 speeding tickets in the last year, Jeff. But he was at Washington. He went to play for Bill Belichick when Bill's son left UW and went to North Carolina. And I thought it was really good. And I've spoken to people at Washington who say really good. Worst is he smokes a bit of weed and stuff like that. But like ultimately a good kid. I'm a bit frustrated that the speeding things exist because I want to be able to like push him and go, this is a guy I really like, but I kind of feel like it's just the Seahawks aren't going to take it because there's just too much of a character thing there. And there are others. Like I only have Davis and Igbinosun in day 3 because I think it's too inconsistent. I think TJ Hall's a bit slow. I do like Ephesians Price up, but I think he's like day 3. The point is, Jeff, is how many names have we reeled off there? Like, you're going to get a cornerback. Like, it's not a stress for me at all. Sign Josh Jobe, go and get 1 or 2 of these guys and be happy about it.
Yeah, I was very fortunate that the day I was kind of down there interviewing people myself was the cornerback day. And I got a chance to talk to a lot of these guys. And I'm reading for your articles over the years. You really get to – people cover the combine. Everyone's asking, what do you learn the first time? So you really get invested in these guys when you get to talk to them. And I talked to every one of the cornerbacks. And I was trying not to ask, like, did you meet with the Seahawks? Like, that's boring. I was asking them if they watched the Seahawks defense and seeing how they reacted. So that was my kind of creative way of asking. And cool answers. Like, Brandon Cisse was at the NFC Championship because of his relationship with Nick Eamon-Warwick. And Colton Hood grew up, his brother was a Seahawks fan. He got Mike McDonald to call his brother. And I got to talk to Dalen Everett, and he was telling me some stuff about was watching the Seahawks defense. And when I've been playing with the simulators, like a lot of the times, by the time you get to 64, a lot of the corners get cleaned out. But like, if you like Dalen Everett, if you like some of these other names, like, you got options there. Like, one of my favorite scenarios for them is maybe a move back from 32, get into the early 40s, take the corner of your choice, and get one of those early day 3 picks back. And I think that's a great idea. And I think you just have so many options. D'Angelo Pons, just like, what a cool guy to talk to. He's small, but like, the idea of him and Witherspoon, and when I brought up Witherspoon to him, like, you should have seen his face. He was same conference. He must have been studying him. Like, the amount of corners that just talked about the Seahawks with like reference was pretty crazy. And like, if I covered the draft 3 years ago, say the last year of Pete Carroll, and I brought up the Seahawks, they would have been like, I haven't watched them. Like, they were kind of irrelevant. And then all these kids talking about Nicky Manwari and Witherspoon, it was pretty surreal to hear every one of these kids just light up. And then probably that's because they won the Super Bowl as a defensive player. It really kind of, but the volume, like Chris Johnson was a really just self-assured, really a good interview. Couldn't get a sense of like his like confidence, but like he was just really smart. There was just a lot of them. Like almost everyone I talked to, I came out, like some of my podium sessions, I didn't have the best first impressions of some of the guys. Like I was at the Makai Lemon podium where everyone on the internet seems to have an opinion. And honestly, before I saw that, I asked him like what he thought of Sam Darnold coming from USC, and his answer was just weird. And I was at a lot of his sessions, but then I talked to Jordan Tyson, who gave me a pretty good scouting report on Keith Abney. And Keith Abney, he was a professional roller skater. Like he has a crazy backstory, and he was a really cool interview. And Jordan Tyson was just raving about him. But again, it's teammate talking about teammates. It's not the best source. But again, there just felt like there were so many of them, and all of them loved the Seahawks. It was pretty cool.
You learn a lot from speaking to these players. Like, and it is interesting. Like one of the things that I do every year, Jeff, is I do just watch. There'll be a time between now and the draft where I'll just watch a lot of interviews of players to find out. You can get a feel for whether they're going to be Seahawks or not, like from the way that they speak. And I thought it was great that your interview, to be able to find that Brandon Cisse was at the freaking NFC Championship game and that Colton Hood's brother's a Seahawks fan. Like, that's little bits of information that you just would never get from a Google search or anything like that. Like, it was fascinating to see that. But they can get a corner. Like, that's the interesting thing. They can get a cornerback from the draft. I'm very relaxed about that. But what about the other positions before we do the super chats, Jeff? Because it sounds like, so Garofolo was on with Puck today, and Puck said, "What's the chances of Ken Walker staying?" And Garofolo said, "I'll text somebody." And he went on his phone, and it's either the agent or it's John Schneider, and he got a reply straight away saying mild chance of him staying in Seattle. So and I think Breer said something similar as well. I think he said that there's like, don't count it out yet, and you do wonder a little bit like, okay, we're not going to sign him or him, so maybe we can just pay a little bit more for Ken Walker. I don't want to pay Ken Walker $14 million a year. I don't want to lose him necessarily. I don't want to spend $14 million a year at a running back, Jeff, who's not Christian McCaffrey at his best or Marshawn at his best. But he looks like he's going. Shaheed sounds like he's going. Woolen, Maffei sound like they're going. Question mark for Kobe Bryant. How do you feel about all of that?
I went into the week thinking, okay, maybe I thought they were going to sign Walker. I just thought the Charbonnet injury and how Walker performed at the end of the year once Alden took over. I went into the combine week thinking like that's going to happen. We ran into some people the first night we were down there that said 70% chance he's leaving. And I was like, ooh, maybe I got this one wrong. And the buzz on Walker throughout the week was really strong. There's Giants people who think he's going to sign. I met the ESPN writer for the Giants who's been talking about that. There's Chiefs people. So one of the first things, a funny thing, I get down to the combine and it's freezing cold in Indianapolis. And I'm coming from Toronto, so I should have expected cold weather. And I put on my little beanie, or in Canada we call them toques. I don't know what you call them in England, but my winter hat. And I'm wearing my Seahawks winter hat, which I should have realized that the combine is a stupid idea because literally the whole city, it's a small city, is full of NFL people. So this guy from the Chiefs comes running over to me wearing a Chiefs shirt, and it turned out to be Zach Orr's brother. So I ended up talking to him for a while, but it was just crazy being down there. But I got the sense they like Walker. And so people tell you things very quickly, and wearing the Seahawks hat, that was a good way to meet some people you would have never normally met. But there's a lot of buzz about the Broncos. They apparently like Walker. So I went in thinking the Seahawks are going to come out of there with them. I left the week thinking, oh, boy, 10% chance, maybe less. And what I put out a tweet a couple of weeks ago, and I actually retweeted it last night. I think when the Seahawks really want to pay a profile player, they pay them. There's this idea that John Schneider's cheap. I get that. Was he cheap with Charles Cross? Was he going to be cheap with JSN? Was he cheap when he made all these Legion of Boom? He paid Abraham Lucas. This seems to be forgotten. They signed both tackles. There was the next bucket of guys that they like, but they stick to their price on. So I think in that group is Walker. I think it's Kobe Bryant. And I think Shaheed. And Job, I think, is in that group. And with Walker, I think they had a very set price for him. And I heard Bray Henderson say early in the week that they're really evaluating him at the full body of work. So they're saying they're not overvaluing based on what he did in the playoffs. And when I was at John Schneider's podium, he said that exact same thing. So John Schneider was like, when we're evaluating Ken, we're making sure we just look at the full body of work. And I'm like, okay, Brady did something. And I think they probably value him at the 10 to 11 million. And it sounds like he's going to end up 14 to 16 million. And I would have considered franchising him because of this window they're in, because Charbonnet's out. But I know a lot of people would have hated that idea. And most people would, too much cap room to give to one guy. But there's a big market for Walker. And I think Seattle's valuation is $4 or $5 million annual per year off of what the league will give him. So I think he's gone.
Yeah, I'd agree. And it sounds like Shaheed's gone based on what Schefter said. That certainly sounds like he's
Well,
on his
and
way.
Shaheed, there's been talks yesterday that he was going to get somewhere between 15 and 20 million. And I was like, that can't be true. Then Brady Henderson puts out a tweet that an agent told him he thought Shaheed would get 18 million a year. And look, I loved Shaheed. I had so much fun watching him. But it's just not smart business to give him 18 million a year.
No,
it's not. It's something you think the Raiders might do because they have $100 million of cap room. They got Clint Kubiak. They got a rookie quarterback. I would love.
I would. 10 million to me felt like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but 12 million maybe I would go, but like
he's never had more than a 750-yard season.
He had like 13 catches with the Seahawks.
Yeah. Like you need a difference maker for 20 million. Like even if that's half of what JSN is going to be, it needs to be somebody who is like and people go, he's a difference maker. Like I get it, he's a playmaker potentially, but
put that money into the trenches. Don't spend it on wide receivers.
Yeah, unless it's Mike Evans.
Spend it on running backs.
It's all about the trenches, Jeff. It's all about the trenches, and it always will be.
I think the question is like, should you be paying Cooper Kupp 17 million of cap room? I think that's a fair question, but that doesn't mean you should go out and pay Rashid Shaheed $18 million.
No. And I think Cooper Kupp is it's his experience and leadership more than anything else, which is pretty good. Before we do the super chat, I know. Are you okay for time, Jeff? We've got 5 minutes for some super chats.
Oh yeah, I'm good.
But if we have, I saw that you had the famous old shrimp cocktail in Indianapolis. I can't eat that stuff because shellfish does not agree with me. But I wanted your review of the famous shrimp cocktail at the Combine.
The horseradish sauce is for real. It's no joke. I took the first bite. I took a big dip, and Brian was cracking up at my face. It was it hits you right between the eyes. I didn't think like the actual shrimp was that special, but that sauce is. Yeah, it's such an interesting city in Indianapolis because it's small enough where you can walk everywhere, but really like every other corner is steakhouses. I've never seen so many steakhouses. And like I was there for like 5 days, and I think almost 3 of my meals I didn't order steak everywhere. But if you want to like see people in the league, they're literally at every of these steakhouses. Like I saw NFL people in and out of all these places. It's such a weird thing because like these guys don't know who I am, but like guys who've been covering the league, like you see Pelissero walk around, he's shaking hands with Mike Vrabel, and like.
Did you shake hands? Oh, he shook hands. I was going to say, did you shake hands with Mike Vrabel?
I didn't talk to Mike. I saw Mike Vrabel a lot.
Yeah.
The weird part about it was he looked so sad. Like we were sitting like beside the Patriots team like radio station, and he came on there. Apparently, at his podium, he was really sad. Like I talked to like Jesse Minter a little bit. I said just congrats, and he had no clue who I was, and. It's weird because it's really cliquey. Like the guys who know each other can go up and talk to anyone, but you're literally there's a hotel, the JW Marriott, where everyone stays, and on one side of the bar, like all the media guys hang out, and on the other side of the like you walk to the other side, it's all coaches. And I walk in there and like Jay Harbaugh's hanging out with his buddies, and Leslie Frazier's talking to all these old guys, and Brian Fleury was walking around, and I'm like, do I say something? Like these guys don't have a clue who I am. Even the media guys, like Danny Kelly came up to me and said hello, but most of the media guys know each other, but like I don't even have my picture on Twitter. So some people probably know, but you would love it. You would love this combine. Like I was there for the first time. It was very hard to get credentials this year, and I was so lucky I got to go, but like it's crazy. Like you're walking around at night and you just see like, oh, there's Brandon Staley. Oh, there's that guy. Everyone is in this small city, and it's pretty surreal.
Yeah, I'm desperate to go one day. I actually saw the pictures of how quiet it was on the last day when the offensive lineman. I was thinking, God, I'd love to be there. You'd have like the whole room to yourself. Like, and there'd be very few people like competing for like the opportunity to speak to these players. It would have been awesome.
I went for the receiver quarterback day, and that wasn't that busy. And like, I got to like post up at like Malachi Lemon's thing or Jordan Tyson's thing. These guys are supposed to be like top 20 picks.
Big names.
I have to be like fighting for space. Like Mendoza had a crazy one, and Caleb Downs had a crazy one. But like the O-line day, like everyone flies out. And like last year, like I know like someone who was down there, like they got to talk to Robbie Utes, who was just sitting there on the side. And they got incredible content out of them.
Yeah. I'd love to. It's that and the Senior Bowl, like bucket list things for me. The problem with the Senior Bowl is it coincides with my daughter's birthday, so she's probably gonna have to get a lot older before I can do that, unless they change the date. The Combine is a bit more easier for me, but I suppose a few weeks after traveling all the way to California for the Super Bowl, it's like I can't justify it right now. But anyway, one day for sure. Let's look at the super chats then. Big Mike says really need Josh Jobe signed. Big thank you for that, Big Mike. Big supporter of the channel. DJT is the person who was asking about Maxx, or was mentioned about Maxx Crosby to the Rams. Here's something to walk me off the ledge for the idea of Crosby to the Rams. Laugh out loud. Thank you, DJT. Slacker Hero says JS comes from the Green Bay tree. He doesn't splash at free agency and will let free agents walk and use free agency to plug holes. Has been doing this for a decade plus now. He has, Jeff, but in fairness, look, I can remember us messaging when they signed Draymond Jones. Like they have been out and have been aggressive at times. Like it's not. I mean, Sam Darnold last year, that was a big free agent splash. Like at the start, he was like in the top 5 of the free agents list. They spent $100 million there, so he has been willing to splash at times in free agency. And in fairness, Green Bay have started to be a little bit more aggressive since Ted Thompson's departure and sad passing.
And look, they don't win the Super Bowl last year without the free agency period they had, where they got Lawrence, probably the best signing in the league. Darnold, one of the best signings in the league. Cooper Kupp was great in the playoffs. Josh Jones, like that was a huge deal. Like how many times have we seen over the years the Seahawks tackle gets injured and Stone Forsythe has to come in and the line collapses? Josh Jones was able to hold up in some of these, the Rams game at the end of the year, the Niners game in Week 18. Like those were big signings. And for me and you have been talking about for years, like you can't just sit back and only draft now. Like you need to be smart in free agency. And look, I think if there's been a criticism of Schneider, I don't think he's handled free agency particularly well. He gets a little too Ted Thompson-like sometimes and just tries to sit back and be too patient, and then the market's gone, and he just burns through cap room, and he did it that 1 year with 2020 and 2021. I'm hoping we've learned some lessons from last year, but again, they sat back. Lawrence fell through the market. Kupp got cut late. Darnold didn't have the market that people anticipated. I don't love how Schneider's done free agency, and I think it's setting up for kind of another frustrating year for fans, and hopefully they're able to turn it around.
Last few super chats. Noah says, what do you both think we do at running back? Also, can we get an Adam Nathan wellness check? Spurs are going down yet. Spurs have lost again. I do feel for Adam in that regard. It will be causing me a great deal of distress. But running back, we kind of talked about it, Jeff. Like, give us a prediction then. What do you think they do?
I think they're going to sign a mid-level player. I think Tyler Algier makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, my guess would be Algier and a rookie of some description, whether they draft one or an undrafted free agent that they seem to like. And, they have found some value in the past later on or in free agency. So we'll see what happens there. Banks to 3 says, what do you think about Benjamin St. Juste in free agency? Liked him coming out. He's been okay. Joe Witherspoon and St. Juste as a starting trio. I mean, he's okay. I interviewed him before he was drafted, and a really cool guy. I think I interviewed him in his car.
I think he's Canadian.
Well, there you go. Well, sign him up. So there we go. But sounds fine to me, Jeff. But I just think they're going to sign Job and look at the draft. But,
yeah, I don't think you need to sign 2 corners. I think with the draft class, sign 1 corner, and if you don't get Job, maybe that's your pivot. He's kind of like Woolen, where he's like a big, tall. He really fit more of the Pete Carroll corner, I'd say, than the Mike McDonald corner. I think Mike McDonald likes a different kind of player. I think he likes the high IQ zone corner.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Okay, this is Matt. It says, meant to say earlier, extra thanks to the Seahawks super spy Colby Parkinson, who dropped a wide open pass for a likely touchdown with 8 minutes left in the NFC Championship game. John Schneider playing 9D chess, letting him go in 2024. It's a good point, Jeff. Doesn't get talked about much of that drop.
That was a huge drop. He's wide open on that play.
Yeah. Big shout out to Colby. Well done. Sam says, greetings, gents. Late to the party today. According to draft trade calculators, our first and second could move us up to around pick 19. Are there any players worth grabbing in that range? Jeff's disdain is evident on his face.
Straight up in this draft.
pick 19, Jeff, doesn't even feel like if it was getting up to like, let's say, here's what I would say, right? If it got you to pick 10 and you could go and get Spencer Fano to play right guard, like I would be down for that. I don't think John Schneider would necessarily want to trade all that for a guard, but I'd be cool with it, Jeff. I'm not going up to 19 is not high enough to in this draft to want to do that for me.
Yeah, the thing I gotta always say is like a first rounder is not the same as a first rounder every year. A first rounder this year is totally different. Like the last couple of drafts, like pick 19 a couple of years ago was Jared Verse. I can't remember who picked 19 was last year, but you got Gray Zabel at 8. I think it was at Buka. At Buka, I think went 19. I think Zabel.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, he did. Yeah.
So in other drafts, yeah, this is not the draft. There's so few like I don't think there's a huge difference between 19 and 32 to give up your second rounder. No, I want to move down, if anything. This is the draft where the 40s and 50s are similar to the teens.
Yeah, I wouldn't personally want to do that. I'm just trying to find out who I had at number 19 in that kind of. So in the mock that I did, I had Peter Woods at 19, and the players that went directly after him were Caleb Lomu, Mackay Lemon, Caden Proctor, Blake Miller, Munro Freeling. Like that's a right tackle, a left tackle, a tackle who's going to kick inside to guard, a receiver who Jeff has already mentioned is a little bit strange, a left tackle and a defensive tackle. Like to me, it's not. And not that my mock draft is like definitely going to happen that way or anything like in real life, but that there's nothing there that would make me want to sort of move up. And equally, like the guys that I had in like the 20s, I don't want to move ahead of any teams to like find any of them either. Like I was quite content actually when you do I'm already on the mock draft simulators, Jeff. I don't know if you've got to that stage yet, but when I'm doing it for the Seahawks, I always want to trade down. Like it to me, I think 32 and 45, like the value is pretty much the same. I think once you get to that kind of range, even then, like there were players like at 46, 50, 52, 53 that I really liked. So I mean, I'd trade down multiple times if you can. Like, and there's not guarantee that teams are going to want to trade up, Jeff, but there might be some teams that go, oh, I don't need a 5th round pick. Like it's priority undrafted free agent territory. I'll move up some spots. And the Seahawks are going to go, well, the guy that we're going to take here is going to be there anyway. So maybe you do that.
Yeah. And like, if you're looking at corner, receiver, running, like, unless you just have one of these running backs circled, it seems like their positions of need kind of fit with the draft where there's no obvious guy. Like, I think there's a pretty big jump of corners that you can take at 32 or 50 that are pretty similar graded.
Well, as soon as we finish this stream, they're going to trade for Maxx Crosby anyway, so it's a moot point. Banks to 3 says, say they keep 4 backs. Does Kenny McIntosh make the 53-man roster? I mean, it's so hard to say, isn't it? Because he's had a
major injury. And, you're better off throwing a dart against the wall and seeing where that sticks than guessing this now.
I mean, you'd need the medical info, wouldn't you, to know how he's recovered, how he's recovering. Like, if he was fully healthy, like, he showed some promise, but it's just hard, isn't it? I mean, like, he was such a fun player to watch in college. Like, if he was healthy, then yeah, but it's hard to say. Anyway, big thank you to anyone who sent a super chat in. Much appreciated, as always. And a huge thank you to Jeff, who stayed on about 25 minutes more than we were intending to run. There's so much going on, Jeff. So much appreciated. Always love your time and always love your company. Jeff Simmons there. Brilliant to have him with us today on this stream. A quick reminder, SeahawksDraftBlog.com for more analysis. I am going to head over to SeahawksDraftBlog.com now, and I am going to write something, a few more thoughts about this whole Mike Evans thinking out loud thing that I've been doing. So I'm going to put some thoughts there onto the blog. So SeahawksDraftBlog.com for that. Don't forget, subscribe. 50% of you subscribe, 50% of you don't who watch the videos. So if you haven't subscribed already, please do. Let's get those numbers up from 12,100. Let's get them up now. Subscribe, please, and you will not miss out on any videos during this very important off-season for the Seahawks. As soon as anything big happens, we're jumping on with the live stream, so you won't want to miss any of that over the course of the next few weeks. SeahawksDraftBlog.com. Like the video, leave a comment in the comment section if you want mine, because that certainly helps with everything else. Thank you to our Patreons. Thank you to everybody who super chats. Enjoy the rest of your Thursday. Until next time, bye for now.